Happy Thursday and welcome to today's Wonder Why show. We have got women's holistic health coach, Julie Hardwick, is coming to speak to us today about how to survive the holiday frenzy. And she is going to be giving us tips on how to make sure that you don't derail your wellness and diet goals, and how to handle the sugar and the booze and the other stuff that goes on. So before I bring Julie on, hi, I'm Tracy Sider. I am host of the Moving and Reshaping Club Facebook group. If you're not in that group yet, then you're going to want to get there, because that's where everything goes down. You may be watching me all over the place on all my other social media, but if you want the scoop on everything, then joining my Facebook group is where it's at. I am also the creator of the Reshape Method, which is an online biomechanics-based movement program for women over 40, that's women in peri and post-menopause, who want a simpler, smarter, science-based way to get in shape, be ache-free, and age not just well, but audaciously. It is possible. You can do it. You just need the missing piece, which is alignment. Okay, so let me bring on Julie. Hi, Julie. I am so thrilled that you are coming to speak to us today. I love this topic, how to survive the festive frenzy. And you're going to be telling us about tips to tackle sugar, booze, and stress without derailing your diet and wellness goals. So thank you so much for being with us here today. And a little bit of a disclaimer, right? Julie is a graduate of the Reshape Method. So I'm doubly thrilled that you're here to come and speak to our community.
Yeah, no, I'm delighted to come speak on this topic, Tracy. And yeah, I have absolutely, just as a little testament to you, I've loved your Reshape Method. It's been a great thing for me. And, we've sort of come to know each other better through that. And so, yeah, I feel very blessed to have been part of your program.
Well, we are blessed to have you as part of the Reshape Method community.
Yeah.
And what's so amazing about the women in the Reshape Method community is that they're all these like incredible women with incredible knowledge and background, in their careers, or if they're retired from their careers. So tell us a little bit about you and how you got into holistic health coaching. This is also second career for you, right?
It is, yeah. And actually, before we go there, if I could, I always like to know a little bit about my audience, if that's okay. So if I can just pivot a little bit.
Sure.
So let me ask you first, Tracy, what do you think about when you think about health and wellness? And what would you say your pain points are? And I'd like to invite the audience,
please,
those
and
that are
I'm going to be
online, to
checking the
also
chat.
put in the chat, because I'd like to know who I've got online and what their pain points are before I dive into who I am.
And I am going to be checking the chat. So put your comments in the chat. So what's the first thing you want to know from everyone?
So what comes to mind when you think about health and wellness, and what are your pain points stopping you from getting you to where you'd like to be?
So what I think about in terms of health and wellness is that I am 53. So I'm 54 next month. So I am no longer after the body that I had in my 20s and 30s, and that I worked so hard to maintain with diet and exercise. Now for me, health and wellness is really just getting back to myself, having my diet and exercise being in alignment with who I am at this age, and who and where I'm going to be in 10 years time, in 20 years time, in 30 years time, in this new hormonal menopausal state, and doing everything in terms of my outlook, my movement, my diet, and my exercise. It's much gentler, and the Reshape Method is gentle. It's all about alignment. It's about physical alignment. So I'm all about physical alignment, mental alignment, spiritual alignment, and just taking a more natural, holistic approach.
Yeah. I love that. I love that, Tracy. So we're going to totally touch on some of those things today. And, particularly how we, like we said, how we stay on track for just for this frenzy, this chaotic time of year as well, right? So
Yeah, because it can totally derail you, right?
it can, and you shouldn't, and I hope I can give people some tips on that. You shouldn't go, oh, it doesn't matter. I'll just pick it up back after the holidays, right? Because it's hard to restart. It's better just to have some strategies that you can incorporate. So
amazing. Love it, love it, love it. Okay, I'm going to hand it over to you. I'm going to sneak into the background and check the comments in the Facebook group. You may be watching me on YouTube or LinkedIn. I can only monitor the comments in the Facebook group. So if you want to chat to Julie, please hop there to the Moving and Reshaping Club. Okay, over to you, Julie.
All right. So as you said, Tracy, this is our topic today. I'm not going to repeat that. And a bit about me, because that's where you started and I pivoted as a little bit. So a fun fact, I'm actually a chemical engineer by training turned holistic health coach. And as I reflect on this, I kind of chuckle to myself because really it's all still about optimizing things and making them work in the best way they can. So as a chemical engineer, I did that. And now I'm trying to do that for myself and for my clients as a holistic health coach. So similar things, right?
Yes.
Yeah. But anyway, on a more serious note, I want the same for the women that I work with. I have a passion for helping women who are approaching or in the midst of menopause. And I just want them to find more joy and balance and reclaim the energy that they used to have. So not changing their body, right? But just reclaiming that energy so that they can age backwards and just make this their best season of life yet. So that's my passion. And I want that for myself and I want that for the people that I work with. So
heck yeah. Give us a heck yeah in
the chat. Who wants that? Who does that resonate with?
Yeah.
So yeah, absolutely. So I'm gonna start, and I have a WhatsApp group where I work with ladies who of like-minded ladies, just like we talked about, and it's called Holistic Health with Julie. And I like to focus on these 3 pillars. So the emotional, the physical, and the social part of wellness. Now, I'm just curious for those that are listening, when you think of health and wellness, do you tend to just think of eating healthy and exercising? And I'm curious, do you think about like emotional and social aspects? So if this is kind of a new idea to you, just put in the chat. And I'd just be interested in knowing that. But these things, emotional, physical, and social, they're all so important to your health and well-being, and they're really intertwined. If one's off, then the others are going to be off. And they will ebb and flow from day to day and week to week and month to month. But we do want to try to pay attention to each of those. So the first thing I want to talk about, and Tracy, when I ask you about your emotional well-being, what comes to mind for you?
Emotional well-being, definitely, of late, gratitude and trying to focus more on mindfulness practices. Those are, it's so easy to get distracted. Life is so busy. There's so much going on. But I think, as we get older, it's certainly a time that requires more mindfulness, and really taking charge of our own emotional well-being, rather than, perhaps when we were younger, we could have relied more on other people and the responses of other people for that. I feel that as I get older, I want to be more self-reliant in terms of my emotional well-being.
I'm just curious. And I'd like to hear just from people that are listening as well, and from you too, Tracy. Do you tend to take care of other people first, and or maybe you did more in the past and are less now, but You tend to take care of people and go, I'll get to me later. But life
Sure.
is just busy, right? And we
Yeah.
tend to then neglect me later, right? It doesn't happen. And then you go, oh, I'll do it tomorrow.
Yes, absolutely. And I think there's also maybe a hormonal factor to that as well.
Mhm.
When we do have all that estrogen coursing through our blood,
Mhm.
it does naturally um, make us more aware, maybe not giving ourselves the amount of care and attention we need because we
Yeah.
very much still, we've got those kind of like nurturing hormones that are
Yeah.
required by nature, to keep the human population going. And then as you move into late perimenopause, postmenopause, there's kind of less of that estrogen, right? And
Yeah.
so our brain almost gets remapped a little bit in terms
Yeah.
of like, well, I can now focus more on my own self-care.
Right. Right. That, yeah. And just perhaps lived experience as well, that we
Yes.
realize the importance of it. We don't just push through. I know when I worked in corporate, I was very quick to schedule things into my calendar, right? And say yes to things. And I wasn't really good at being intentional about scheduling time for me, right? I didn't put time for me intentionally with intention into the calendar. Again, like I was saying,
Mhm.
it was if it happened. And so what I like to talk about and with this emotional pillow with the ladies that I work with is we're always going to be busy. There's always lots going on. And we really need to try to be intentional about, I talk to them about um, scheduling something that brings them joy every day into their lives, just to nurture them and just to fill them up. I mean, who would like more of that? Like, put in the chat if you would like to just have more joy in your life and be able to schedule more joy in your life.
Yeah, just type joy in the chat for
Yeah.
sure.
And, I have a few examples here in terms of, what might bring you joy. So, Tracy, what is that for you? What brings you joy that you like to do?
Oh, that morning coffee.
That morning coffee. Yeah.
The morning coffee brings me joy. And then because I do a bit of timed eating,
Yeah.
at kind of like mid-morning, I will finally put some nice, full fat milk in my coffee. And then that's another moment of joy. But
Yeah.
also going out walking by myself, listening while I'm walking, listening to a podcast
Hmm.
of something that's really, feeding me spiritually.
Hmm.
Um, Having a warm bath, definitely, I would say the
That's
warm
one of
bath.
my favorites. I've got that on the list, and that's one of my personal favorites too.
Yeah,
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 yeah.
yeah.
And I'm a tea drinker, so I love my cup of tea in the morning, but I love to have a cup of chamomile tea in the evening. It's kind of part of my wind down routine, and we'll talk about that a little bit. But yeah, I've got some things. You mentioned some of the things that I have listed here, Tracy, like spending time in nature, right? And
Yes, and Beth in the chat is saying walking in nature.
okay, okay, great. Yeah. And I think too, like just spending some time, and there's no one size fits all. That's why I wanted to just list these ideas. So like, some deep breathing. One thing that people don't think about that I always like to touch on, which is really good for your digestion and stuff like that too, is mindful eating. Who just sits down to the food, gobbles it down because they're moving on to the next thing, right? Put in the chat if that's you. And actually chewing your food properly can be a mindful activity, like savoring the flavors and enjoying what you're
Mhm.
eating, right? So just taking time for that. Um, but yeah, and you mentioned, just spending time in gratitude. I love when I walk in nature to just really be mindful and observe what's going on around me, but also just think about what I'm grateful for while I'm out there too. So you can do a gratitude walk if journaling isn't your thing, right? So but the thing I'd like people to take away from this is in this frenzy of the holidays, when things are busy, take time for you still. Do something every day that just brings you joy and something for you to just help balance things out. And I did list a few free meditation apps here, a few gratitude apps. I tell my clients about these, just, if they're sort of exploring and they'd like something with an app. So I've really been using Insight Timer a lot lately.
I'm going to take a screenshot of that.
Yeah.
Can you tell us a little bit about these apps?
Yeah. So I like to use the Insight Timer because the meditation that I'm doing right now that I'm training for, it's quiet. It's mantra based and it's going inside. So basically it has all kinds, so you can just have a timer, it has guided meditations. There's all kinds of free things on there just to sort of explore, like things to help you sleep, things to help you, what stories to help you wind down. And I love the gratitude app, which I've listed here. So every day it gives you I love to look at it first thing. It gives you a little inspirational quote. They call it the Daily Zen. And you can kind of write what you're grateful for in there if you want to do it, and you have it with you all the time, right? You don't have to have your journal with you. But yeah, so anyway, the big takeaway here to help you during the holidays is just take some time for you. So, all right. So I'm going to move on now, Tracy, to the physical pillar. I talked a little bit about the emotional pillar. And I said in my Holistic Health with Julie, we talk about the three pillars. So I just want to touch on hormones a little bit. So Tracy, when I talk hormones to you, what comes to mind when you think about hormones?
Oh, you know what? Hormones are they're tricky, right? And I suppose what also comes to mind for me is that when we think about hormones at this stage of our life, we tend to, well, I know I certainly did, just really focus on the sex hormones, right? We think about estrogen and progesterone, and we're just stuck on got to get the estrogen and progesterone right. But there's so much more involved, right?
Exactly.
So now what I've come to learn, in my journey as a peri and post menopause movement coach and corrective exercise specialist, is that hormones play a huge role in our, aches and pains and getting and staying in shape, and that they are complicated and that we need to be going to experts and specialists.
Right. Yeah, and you kind of alluded that too. I think, until sort of I learned more and dove into this, when I thought about hormones, it's like your child, you think about, oh, they enable us to have children, right? And then when I can't have children anymore, my estrogen, progesterone, they're much lower. They're not at the levels they were. So we think about childbearing when we think about hormones. But people probably don't realize, and I have this on the slide, is that hormones are so important for our heart health, for our brain, for our bones, and for our nervous system, as well as just childbearing, right? And so, which are, like you said, the sex hormones, the estrogen, the progesterone, the testosterone. So, and if one of them is out of whack, a lot of times they're all intertwined. We want to try to have things in balance. So the ones I want to talk about today, because they're very pertinent to the holidays and things that are going on the holidays, are the big guns of hormones, which are insulin and cortisol. And I don't know if people sort of realize they're part of the hormone family, but they are. So the first one I want to talk about is insulin. And so Tracy, when you go out to eat, what do people tend to bring you as the first thing when you go out to eat?
Oh, the bread rolls.
The bread rolls.
Breadsticks.
Yeah.
And pizza.
And Tracy, what food group is bread?
Oh, that would be carbohydrates.
Yeah. So good answer. So what I want to talk about a little bit is just first of all, a little bit about the blood sugar roller coaster. We feel better, we have more energy, we feel more even keel if we can try to manage our blood sugar. And, around the holidays, there's lots of sweet things. We're drinking more alcohol, all sort of sweet, carb, sugar kind of things, right? So when we consume those types of things, our blood sugar goes up. So our body responds and makes insulin to bring that blood sugar back down because our body wants us to be more even keel, right? But then when that insulin lowers that blood sugar, then it tanks and we're hungry all over again. And that's when we get these food cravings, right?
Right.
So tips I like to talk about, and I work with the ladies in my group, is a couple of little strategies that I hope people can take away for themselves today is, we want to try to have fat and protein with every meal. And so I like people to think about putting clothes on your carbs. So if
Ooh,
you're
I love that. Say it again.
putting clothes on your carbs.
Yeah.
So like if you're going to have carbs, try to have, a healthy protein, a lean protein, try to have some fat with it. And also, fiber is great because our body gets busy breaking down all that fiber and it doesn't spike that blood sugar as much. So Tracy, with that in mind, what do you think you could do when you went to that restaurant if you wanted to get more fiber first instead of diving into that bread and spiking your blood sugar?
I suppose I'd ask for, a starter, like a veggie starter, some kind of veggie starter to get some fiber,
Yeah.
some type of veggie and protein starter.
Yeah. Yeah. So what I always like to do and what I recommend to the ladies in my group is order a salad, order a yummy salad first and tell them to hold the bread, bring it with the salad, or maybe you don't need the bread once you dive into this salad, right? And there we're
Right.
getting some fiber first and try, and the blood sugar then doesn't spike as much. So the other thing that I like to have my clients work with is food order. And there are lots of studies done actually, even with diabetics, where they're eating the same meal, but the order of their food. So, they eat the vegetables and the protein and the healthy fats first, and then go to the carbs. And again, your body and your is working on digesting those things first, and it doesn't spike the blood sugar as much. So those are two strategies that I want if what people take away today is putting clothes on your carbs and the food order. So it's not changing necessarily what you eat, again, just the order that you eat it in. So who in the chat thinks that this is something that they could tackle? Put a yes if you think this is something that's easy enough to do.
Right. It's so easy, right? Because it's not saying, oh, you've got to make this change. There's something you can't have. It's just saying change the order. I love that. I love that because we do want to enjoy our holidays a bit. It is, a time to indulge. But we don't want to derail either. So I love that. And Beth says yes, for sure.
Yeah, good. So the other thing I want to mention, and Tracy, this is up sort of your alley, is after a meal, try to move your muscles. Maybe go for a little walk, even if it's only 5 minutes, because that is also going to burn off some of that sugar. So your body doesn't have to make as much insulin. And again, we're not getting these big peaks and valleys. So if that enables it, maybe just move your muscles a little bit. If you're going to a party, maybe park a little bit further away, right? So you can just do a little walk. Or, if you're at home, right, then you can just go for a walk around the block or something like that. So but yeah, so those are my thoughts, those are my tips for insulin. So now let's talk about cortisol. So when you're stressed, when you're busy and you're running around, maybe like a chicken with your head cut off, what Tracy, do you know, you've probably heard this, I know you're familiar with this, but what hormone does your body release?
Cortisol.
Cortisol, right?
Yeah.
And that's like the fight or flight hormone, right? And
Right.
cortisol in the right amounts is good for us. It what gets us moving, right? It
Right.
enables us to accomplish tasks and get things done. But with prolonged stress, if with chronic stress, when it's too stressful and you can't get out of that fight or flight mode, then you start to become resistance, and it can lead to things like burnout, depression, chronic inflammation. So I want people to look a little bit at this graph. So the sleep wake cycle, right? So if you look at this, the black line here is cortisol. And if everything is in harmony, let's say, or is working as it should, then your cortisol should be the highest about an hour after you've woken. Again, because you got to get moving, you got to go do whatever you need to do, go to work, get tasks done. And as the day goes on, it should go down. And melatonin is kind of its partner in that it's the opposite of that, right? And so just having a good routine to try to keep this regulated is it's just good for a sleep wake cycle. And like when you are who when they're going to parties or going out or doing things for the holidays, so give me a yes in the chat if your sleep gets sacrificed a little bit, right? Your routine gets off.
For sure. Like totally out of routine. Yeah.
Does that resonate with anybody? Yeah. So what I like to talk about with my group is just having some routines, a morning and an evening routine to try to keep this sleep-wake cycle, otherwise known as the circadian rhythm, just regulated. So like in the morning, if you can, just expose your eyes to some bright light. Maybe that's just walking down, maybe just walking down your driveway, if you have a spare 5 minutes, just walk a little bit. And and then when you break, we talked about it a little bit, when you break your sort of fasting cycle, because you haven't been eating through the night, right? Try to eat within an hour of waking and have some protein with that. Don't just go again with the carbs, because we just talked about blood sugar and that kind of thing, right? And just try to move your body a little bit in the morning. And that will get our cortisol properly regulated. And then, of course, you can see from the graph, we want to try to be winding down at night. So I know it might be hard this time of year, but if we can just stick with our routine, like try to get off your phones, try to get off your electronics at least an hour before you're going to go to bed. And try to, where possible, eat about 2 to 3 hours before bedtime. Try to avoid your midnight snacks because your body is going into the time of the day where it's trying to wind down and relax, and the cortisol should be at its lowest. And if we eat right before we go to bed, we're telling our body it's time to digest. It's not time to sleep, it's time to digest, right? So we want to have a gap before we go to bed if possible. And then just maybe some deep breathing. You don't want your bedroom to be too hot, but just again having a nice bedtime routine that you try to stick to. And again, I know it's harder this time of year with the holidays, but just the best you can stick with your routine, the better off you'll be. So who sort of who in the chat, if you can tell me in the chat, do you do you think you can implement some of these? Do you already do a lot of these? Anything new here? I'm just curious.
Yeah, we'll wait for some answers to come up in the chat. The electronics one is tough, gotta say. And, I've heard also that, like, if you're going to be watching something, it's better to watch on like an actual TV as opposed to a device.
Yeah. The blue light, right? Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. So the electronic one is a challenge. Um, and I do try and work on the no food. Like after dinner, I made this rule like a couple of years ago that like after dinner, that's it, kitchen closed, nothing, not even a grape. And sometimes it gets, you've got to get used to it, right?
Right.
I remember I always used to watch a show and snack in the evenings. And then when I made the rule like nothing after dinner, nothing except maybe some water, it's funny, I kind of like almost I stopped watching TV and started doing other things because I
Oh,
was like, was I watching the show in order to snack, or was I? It's funny how you
that's very
realize
insightful.
that things can be coupled that you aren't even aware of.
Right. And too, Tracy, I think that's when I like to have my cup of chamomile tea, right? Like that's kind of part of my little routine, my wind down. And I'll just sip on my tea instead of maybe, ooh, is this something I want to snack on, you know? Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Because that snacking after dinner is like it's unnecessary, and it interferes with so much. Like so many women in late perimenopause and menopause are struggling with sleep issues, and
Yes,
that is often related to that nighttime snacking because it's playing with your glucose levels, right? Your blood
exactly.
glucose.
Yeah, it's playing with the glucose levels and it's telling you, giving your body mixed signals on what's the time of day, what am I supposed to
Yes.
be doing? Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Did we get any comments, Tracy, in the chat?
Not yet. I'm sure people will comment
All
on the
right. So
replay.
yes, if you're listening to this later, I'd just like to sort of hear, what's something that you do or what's something that you're going to incorporate? Because again, these are simple little things, simple little strategies.
They're so doable. I'm loving them.
Yeah.
Yeah. And the
All
cool bedroom one as well. That can often be a challenge if you have a partner that likes it
yes.
warmer. But that
Yeah.
makes a huge difference.
Yes, not getting too overheated. I'm noticing that this time of year too, just with the heat been on and whatnot. So yeah,
Mm.
yeah. So Tracy, the next thing I want to talk about, which is right up your alley, this is really your wheelhouse, right? But it's part of that physical part of well-being. And the two things I kind of want to take away from this is, and I think you talk about this too, Tracy, is tell me in the chat if you go work out, maybe you do a 30, 45-minute workout, you feel good and you should because you've done that. But then do you sit the rest of the day? Give me a yes if that's you. And Tracy, I can't remember if I learned this from you, but it's a new category, right? Sedentary
Yes.
active. And it's kind of like the new smoking almost, right? And
Right.
so, couple of just little strategies, little takeaways I just want to talk about is walking is so beneficial and it's so easy for us to do. And, we don't have to have a gym membership. We can just go do it. And it has so many benefits like cardiovascular health, weight management. It's great for your mood. I know if I'm feeling a little, I've been on calls, you get out, go for a walk, you feel so much better. And I've listed some of the other things here on the slide. But yeah, just walking is really good for us and really important. So just do some natural movement. And then the other thing I want to talk about and I learned this from you, Tracy, just releasing the psoas muscle. So what people don't realize, and you can probably I'll ask you here in a minute, Tracy, if there's anything you want to add, but when we're sitting and we're sitting all day, if we're part of that sedentary active category, we're getting tension in our psoas muscle. And along with that, we store anxiety and and also the psoas muscle, I think, is the fight or flight muscle. So we want to try to release that if we can. And if you're a member of Tracy's group or a part of our program, she kind of talks about spending time, maybe like 10 minutes, fit it into your day to try to release that psoas muscle. And you can actually have this part of your bedtime routine. If you're doing a little breathing to wind down, this is a great thing to do. And when we release that, it activates our parasympathetic nervous system. So the sort of rest and relax part. So Tracy, what would you add to this?
Oh, no, that was wonderful. That is a great summary. Yeah, that psoas muscle, it's very deep in the body. So we don't really give it much attention because we can't touch it or feel it like you can your quad muscle. But it is really affecting everything that's going on because, yeah, the psoas muscle, which attaches to the lower back and then to the top of the hip, that is our fight or flight muscle, gets you ready to, run away from the saber-toothed tiger. But the problem is when it's on all the time, and for most of us in this modern lifestyle, right, our stress response is on all the time, and it can be on overtime over the holiday season as well, because there's planning and there's guests and there's in-laws and all sorts of things going on, right? So we think it's a time to relax, but for many people it can actually be quite stressful. And then of course every time you sit down, every time you scroll through your emails or whatever, every time you drive, that psoas muscle is being stimulated. And for me, in terms of what we're doing in the reshape method and as a corrective exercise specialist, the tightness through that psoas is pulling you out of alignment, which is stopping the way your body functions, which is affecting the way, going for a walk is amazing, right? And I love that you've got it down as one of your tips. But what we then take further, in the reshape method, and I'm going to be having a walking challenge coming up soon, is being able to get your body back into alignment so that you can actually walk in a really, really efficient way. And being able, so now, and what I also want to add is that releasing the psoas muscle is different to stretching the psoas muscle. So often, you'll go to a physio or you'll go to a yoga class and they will maybe mention the psoas and they'll give you a stretch. Stretching is great. Yeah, we want stretching, but the stretching is only really going to make a difference in the context of releasing the muscle, stretching the muscle, and strengthening the muscle. So what we really do focus on a lot is this special move or unmove that I have people in the reshape method called the psoas release. And yes, it does I like to think it's like meditation on steroids, because it's doing to your nervous system. It's down regulating your nervous system in 2 minutes, what like half an hour of meditation would do. And if people want to take a look and see what the psoas muscle, what the psoas release is that Julie's talking about, in my ultimate holiday gift yourself guide, which we were talking about last week, on the day 2 workshop of the 5 days. So last week I went through each from Monday to Friday, I did these workshops showing you, talking a bit about some of these amazing 40 gifts that I've got in the Gift Yourself guide. And I think on day 2, when I spoke about the bolster, the yoga bolster, I showed people how to use it in the context of a psoas release. So if you're in my Facebook group, if you're not, then hop in there, the Moving and Reshaping Club for Women 40 Plus, and you will find all those workshops, the 5 workshops, either under the featured section or under the guides section. So you can check them all out and grab that guide for yourself. Plus, check out the psoas release under, I think it was day 2, right? Do you remember, Julie? I can't remember. I think
I'm not sure, but if you want to know more, just pop in the chat psoas, and then Tracy can kind of put something in later just to direct people where to.
Sure, yeah. And Beth says, I love how the psoas release feels. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a great one. All right, so I am going to move on to the next pillar of what I talk about in physical. And I think this is very apropos around holidays, because who's probably going to be buying gifts for people where they might be buying, a personal care product or something like that. So listen here if you think you might fall into that category. So Tracy, I want to ask you, are you familiar with the term greenwashing?
I am not.
Okay, so let me tell you and the people listening a little bit about it. So, you've heard brainwashing, right? Which is kind of
Mhm.
like where somebody sort of makes you believe something that's not real, right? So greenwashing is very similar. It's where companies are wanting to try to take advantage of the clean beauty market. So they might on their packaging do it a nice green earthy color. They might put like a green leaf on it. They might say natural ingredients, organic ingredients, but you really have to advocate for yourself because you might look at the list of ingredients and the majority of them are actually quite toxic and there's a couple that are organic, so so that's what greenwashing is. It's not maybe truly a clean product.
Mm-hmm.
So I wanted to share a couple of fun facts with you. So and if you're listening in the chat, and Tracy, I'll ask you, how many beauty products on average do you think a lady uses in a given day? Just on average.
Oh, goodness. Maybe 10?
You're very close. Yeah. So what the data suggests is like 12 products. And with that comes about 168 unique ingredients. That floored me when I learned that. So another fun fact is how many chemicals do you think are banned in Europe? And if you're listening online, pop this in the chat too. So how many do you think are banned in Europe?
Um, hmm, Maybe 100?
Oh, interesting. So it's actually over 2,000.
Wow.
The last I looked, it was about 2,400 chemicals. Now, what do you think about the US?
Hmm. I mean, I know the US is less, but I wouldn't know what
Yeah,
number to put it at. Yeah. So it's 2,000 chemicals banned in Europe.
Europe, like over 2,000.
Yeah. And in the US, maybe I'll go with 100 again.
Yeah, so it's actually 11.
Wow.
So whose reaction to this is, I want to know more, It's like,
Yeah.
yeah, you need to advocate for yourself. So just real high level, because of the time that we have today, but these type of, products that have endocrine disruptors in them, they can mimic natural hormones. So your body thinks it's got more hormones than it does. They can block the actual binding of hormones to cells. So in other words, the takeaway without getting too technical is it can mess up your hormones. And
Mm-hmm.
so I've listed here some common places that some of these toxins can hide, the different categories. And I think my main, if somebody's like, what do I do? How do I advocate? How do I take care of myself in this space? So there's a couple of apps that I love to use. One of them is the Yuka app, and I have that listed at the bottom of the slide, YUKA. You can download that, or EWG. And they have scanners in the app. And when I go shopping, I mean, I have my products that I like and I know that are clean, right? But if I'm looking to do something else or buy something, I'll scan them and I know whether it's something, that I want to think about or want to purchase. And if it has a really long list of chemicals as well, it's things you don't recognize, that's probably a signal. There's stuff in here I don't really want to put on my skin or you know clean my home with or what have you. But without having to learn all those chemicals, these apps are great tools to use to see if the product is clean or not. You don't have to be an expert or
I
anything.
love that. Great, great tip. Yuka app.
So,
Awesome.
yeah, yeah. So, the last thing I wanted to talk about today, Tracy, is what do you think, in terms of the well-being, people take the most for granted? They think it'll just happen automatically.
Oh, goodness. I'm not sure. Can you give me a clue?
You caught me while I was drinking some water. So, I want to talk a little bit about
Ah, social
social
well-being.
well-being.
Yes.
Yeah. So our relationships and the communities that we're involved in are really so important to our well-being. And I think a lot of times, people, they get involved in things, they take these things for granted, they sort of happen to them, right? And they're not necessarily intentional about, or as intentional as they could be about their relationships and their communities. And often you're spending time with like-minded people. It's a great support network for you. It's a great, in community, it's a great growth mindset, right? You learn new things, and that's really good for our health and our brain, and it expands your horizons. You can be curious. So, so I guess my takeaway for you is try to be intentional about that. And of course, around the holidays, you might want to reconnect with people that you haven't, or, we're interacting a little bit more, right? So relationships become very forefront for us. So I would just encourage you to give some thought to this. And on the opposite side of that, toxic relationships are really bad for our health and well-being. We might be eating healthy, exercising, but if we're in toxic relationships, that really impacts us. So, think about your relationships, and do you need to step away or take a pause, right? So that's, I guess, my message there. And then the last thing, our spirituality and our faith, it really is, if just whatever that is, whether, if it's a higher power or just, whatever spirituality is for you, it can give you inner peace, some comfort, some hope. And again, it's really important to our health and well-being. It can give us a sense of purpose and, help us identify our values and share our gifts with others. So I guess my takeaway here is don't take this pillar of health for granted. There's a lot here. There's a lot to unpack. And yeah, so I'm curious in the chat, do you, if this is a little eye-opening to you, do you just say yes if you feel like you need to spend more time on this part of wellness?
Well, I would say, yeah, while we're waiting for the yeses to come in the chat, because there is a bit of a delay.
Yeah.
Yeah, so important. And I love that you've included this, because I think this is an area that a lot of people overlook.
Yeah. Does this resonate with you, Tracy?
For sure.
Yeah. And do you think also that sometimes you take it for granted and been more intentional about it, is just thinking about relationships?
Absolutely. And I also think, that it requires some intentionality, especially coming off, the back of the thing that cannot be named on Facebook, right? And all the social distancing that was involved in that. I know for me, it's like I got so used to being a bit socially isolated that in the past year, I've really had to make a conscious effort to be more involved in my community and in my relationships and in my spirituality too, because that often involves having to be in contact with other people, which I think for a long time we, with what was going on in the world for so long, with the vid, it was easy. And especially when you're like a bit of an introvert, like I am, it was like, I've been practicing for this my whole life, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And now I need to come out of it again. And that's challenging. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a really good point. That's a really good point. Yeah. And in my group, I've been encouraging people too, to this time of year, just, think of somebody that might be lonely, reach out to somebody. And also just when you're scurrying around doing your shopping, right? Just spend time to be kind to the person helping you, the person checking you out at the register, or a lot of these people are working long hours, right?
Yes.
And just that really fills them up, and it nurtures you by just being kind as well. So
absolutely. I love that one. The random acts of kindness. So important.
Yeah. So anyway, Tracy, this is a little wrap-up slide. Just again, balance is the key, right? Bringing it all together. And I just have a few little things here. I'm just wondering which of these resonates with you? Which ones do you gravitate to when you look at these different ones here that you're like, oh, I need to do more of?
Chew my food. We'll ignore the limit caffeine for now.
Okay.
The use clean products, that's absolutely something that I think I need to be a little bit more mindful of going forward. Faith and spirituality for sure, relationships and community, and observe food order. Love that.
So if you're listening to this, go ahead and put in the chat which one of, same question I just asked Tracy, which one of these do you gravitate towards and feel like you want to explore some more? And Tracy, while we're waiting on that, we can look at some comments. I just want to say, if you like what you heard today, if you feel like you'd like to sort of delve into some of these topics a little bit more, here are some ways to contact me. If you're listening, you can certainly reach out to me, but also if you want to put in the chat, yes, me, I will be happy to follow up with you and we can kind of have a chat. I mentioned a few times, I have a WhatsApp community, Holistic Health with Julie. It costs less than $1 a day. And we really explore these and it's a group of like-minded women. We support each other and we're always trying to learn something and incorporate some of these things into our lives in an incremental way. So it's not too hard and not too overwhelming. So
amazing. Thank you. That was just one, such practical tips. Do you want to just stop this? There we go. Such practical tips. Love them all. Amazing. Thank you so much for coming to talk to us today, Julie. And if you're watching on the replay, if you have any questions for Julie, please put them in the chat. In the recording of this, that can be found in the Moving and Reshaping Club Facebook group. Julie, thank you for coming to talk to us. And
thank you so much, Tracy.
Wishing you a wonderful, wonderful holiday season and just a fantastic 2024. Like, how are you feeling about 2024?
Oh, me? Or you?
Yes.
I'm excited about it. I'm excited to sort of just explore this passion more and just try to spread a ripple effect and help other ladies, be as passionate about what I do as help them to be as passionate about what I do. So, yeah.
And your passion absolutely shines through. So please type yes, me, if you would like Julie to be in contact with you, or we'll put the details in the chat as well, that email address. But thank you so much again for coming to speak to us. I hope everybody feels that they are equipped and armed to tackle the festive frenzy without getting derailed, because those are just great tips. Thank you so much for coming to join us, Julie.